This is reporter Julie Spencer, and I'd like to welcome you to Newsline, Iowa City. Please join me today as we talk with local Veterans of Peace members Ed Flaherty and Paul Deaton as they give us information about the organization.
Can you tell me about the Veterans for Peace organization?
Sure. Veterans for Peace is a national organization made up of armed service veterans. It started about 26 years ago, and it's based in St. Louis, Missouri. It got started really because there were a number of veterans who were very upset about the United States policy in Central America. And it started as an organization then. Here in Iowa, it's relatively new. A year ago at this time, there were no chapters of Veterans for Peace in Iowa. We formed a chapter here in eastern Iowa in July of last year, and just last month, a new chapter in Des Moines in central Iowa was formed.
What do you do? What is the main goal for the organization? What types of things do you do?
Well, I think, Julie, the main goal that we have is to point out the cost of militarism. We find that militarism is in almost everything. There's some military expense in every state. In many foreign countries we have bases. And I think people don't understand how much this militarism is costing us each.
Such as
and that cost is in dollars and cents, but it's also in human cost, and not just the young men and women who are in our armed services who die in these endless wars, but their injuries that they come home with. You know, the injuries that can be seen number about 40,000 from Iraq and Afghanistan. The injuries that can't be seen, the PTSD, the TBI, conservatively 300,000.
Can you talk about that a little bit? The PTSD and the TBI, what are those exactly?
Go ahead.
Well, the PTSD is post-traumatic stress disorder, and it is a diagnosed medical condition that is a person's reaction to extreme trauma. It's not really anything new. You know, in World War I they called it shell shock, and it doesn't happen exclusively to people that have been in combat, but it is something that affects you after you've had a traumatic experience. And so, especially with Iraq and now with Afghanistan, you see a lot of armed services people being sent over and over again in deployments back to Iraq, back to Afghanistan. They witness tough things, even if they're not shot at. They see hundreds of civilians dead. They witness IEDs going off. That's where you get into TBI, traumatic brain injury, which is really a result of the shock waves and the resonance of these explosions that actually bounce the brain around inside the cranium. And so the two illnesses, TBI and PTSD, they're not the same. They are related. And in a lot of cases, if you have one, you have the other. Now, the country as a whole and the VA have been slow to recognize the impact and effect of these, but they do now. So here in 2011, they're taking much better care of folks with PTSD than they were, let's say, in 2004. Now that's true for U.S. veterans. I'm not sure that it's true for Iraqi civilians. Not sure that it's true for Afghan civilians. You know, of Iraqis, there are 4 million Iraq refugees right now. 2 million who are living in other countries like Lebanon and Syria and Jordan, and 2 million that are displaced out of their own homes in Iraq. the extent of PTSD among all those folks is certainly great. The mental health resources that are so very, very, very short here in the United States are geometrically increased in Iraq and Afghanistan among the civilian population. The economic costs of war are really so great that they're hard to comprehend. Last week, the House of Representatives approved a bill which authorized $690 billion for the Pentagon. $690 billion for 1 year, and that doesn't include things like Veterans Affairs or Homeland Security. It's an immense amount of money. If you think that the nation spends $350 million on Alzheimer's research, which affects like 3 million people, you get an idea in terms of where our priorities are as a country. So this is one of the things that Veterans for Peace speaks to. And another thing is we want justice for victims of war, and that includes veterans and people in other countries where we have decided that our presence is essential. And for the most part, Veterans for Peace does not see our military presence in other countries as essential. Some Veterans for Peace are pacifists. I think Paul and I could safely be said to not be pacifists. Personally, I'm not strong enough to say I'm a pacifist. I certainly believe in self-defense. And can there be such a thing as a necessary war? Possibly. None of the ones that we've been in the last 50 years have been necessary.
And what are some of the long-reaching goals of the organization?
Well, certainly a long-reaching goal would be to abolish war as an instrument of foreign policy. One of our members put it more simply. He just said war should be the last option, not the first option. So I think a long-term goal would be that we need to invest in peace, like Paul's buttons say, to wage peace. When we're investing $690 billion a year in war, we get what we invest in. We invest in war. If in fact we invest in peace, maybe the results would actually be better and certainly less expensive.
Can you tell me a little bit about your experience? Were you in Vietnam, or what branch of the service were you in?
Well, I was an infantry officer stationed in Mainz, Germany after the Vietnam War. In fact, our unit transferred directly from Vietnam to West Germany then. And in the post-Vietnam era, what we were concerned about was two things. Number one, what the Soviet Army was doing on the other side of the border. And the other thing was dealing with a tremendous drug problem in the U.S. military. It was something that every officer, every NCO paid attention to because it had a direct impact on our readiness. And it was very frustrating dealing with that because the heroin was coming through the East German, from East Germany. And the reason I mention that is that's a side of the military that people don't often hear about, is the tremendous drug problem. Now, a lot of my friends were officers as well, and after that time did tremendous things to cure the drug problem.
Is there still a heavy drug problem now?
Oh, sure. There is, and some of it goes back to the what we've talking about with PTSD. You know, the guys and women self-medicate. You know, and some of the drugs the VA gives out aren't totally effective, and so I don't think you would have to go 100 yards from here to find 10 veterans, not necessarily of Iraq and Afghanistan, but of Vietnam also, who are self-medicating every day as a result of their experiences in the military. So I'm not saying that all military drug problems stem from PTSD and TBI, but a lot do.
What about the benefits they receive when they come back? Do you think there's
Well,
some problems with that also?
Oh, there always are problems as far as that, and then that's one of our purposes as an organization is to seek justice for veterans, and we've been very active nationally in addressing PTSD and TBI, addressing this practice of sending people over and over and over again on multiple deployments. But we're not an American Legion or a VFW with millions of members. So in terms of having big offices and a lot of vans and members in every city who can lobby for benefits, those organizations have done a lot of lobbying for benefits for veterans over the years, and I would not want to put those efforts down.
Well, at the same time, Veterans for Peace has members who belong to all these other service organizations as well. And I know that some of the things that are being done for the Veterans Administration to improve that are collaborative in nature between the various veterans groups here in Iowa and elsewhere. So I think that even though we don't directly lobby or have the presence to lobby on people's behalf, we do participate in that collaboration with other groups.
What's in the future for the Veterans for Peace organizations? What do you see further down the road?
Well, for our chapter, we're very active, and we have a lot of interest from veterans in the community. So I see.
How many members are there here now?
I would say about
50,
30 in the Iowa City, Cedar Rapids,
Iowa.
Cedar County area.
And maybe similar in Des Moines. So because there's a lot of interest, I mean, people regularly show up at the meetings, there's a vibrancy, people are wanting to do things. In fact, our agenda was so long the last meeting that took us quite a while to get through it all, because there's so many opportunities for us to participate in things. So as long as we have active, interested, engaged members, then I think we'll continue to do more things. One of the things we're looking at is visiting schools. And I was just down at a 6th grade class with a World War II veteran and a post-Vietnam era veteran, talking to them about what it's like to be in the military, what it's like to serve during World War II. And I see us doing more outreach like that.
My view would be, I would like to see Veterans for Peace become extinct, because the wars have ended, and because we've actually transformed our priorities into waging peace rather than waging war. Now, that's dreamy. That's not going to be anything that happens in my lifetime, but that's my goal. Is we need to evolve to peaceful human beings, and it is possible, because ultimately we think maybe day to day that we are secure, but this militarism threatens all of us. And even if we're not being deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan, it affects us morally, it affects us economically, and it affects us in terms of our physical endangerment through how we every day push to the extermination of the world, either through environmental degradation over the small, steady steps that militarism advances, or nuclear war, which will wind up taking us all.
Thank you very much for talking with me.
Thanks for having us on.
Thanks.
Thank you.